Imagine this, it's late at night, and you step into a small apartment in a Russian city. You expect the usual stillness of a home at rest, but the air feels heavy, with an old, almost musty smell hiding something far more sinister. In the corner, dozens of life size dolls stand motionless. They are dressed in frilly clothes, each with glassy eyes staring into nothing. At first glance, it's just strange display, but there's something off. And the truth is far more horrifying. These dolls are not toys at all. They are the preserved bodies of young girls. In life, Anatoly Moskvin was an unassuming figure, a brilliant linguist and historian. He taught at a university and could speak 13 languages. To most, he seemed polite, intellectual, and deeply curious, especially about cemeteries and local folklore. But behind that respectable image was a dark obsession with death, one that began when he was just a boy. One summer day, young Anatoly was taken to a funeral. There he was forced to kiss the forehead of a dead girl lying in an open coffin. That single haunting moment never left him. From that day forward. He became obsessed with the dead, convinced he could somehow communicate with them. As he grew older, this fascination turned darker. He began reading obituaries, searching for children he believed were calling to him from beyond the grave. If a particular death notice spoke to him, he would sneak into the cemetery at night, lie on the grave, and wait for hours. He believed that if he listened closely, the spirit would whisper to him, asking to be saved. And in his mind, saving them meant digging them up from the grave. Once Anatoly removed a body, he did not see himself as a criminal. He thought he was rescuing the child from the cold, lonely earth. He began a process he called revival. He mummified each body by wrapping it in cloth and treating it with salt and baking soda. He dressed them in burial clothes, applied makeup to their faces, and glued bright blue plastic eyes into their sockets so they could watch cartoons with him. If a body was damaged, he stuffed it with rags to restore its shape. To him, they were not corpses, they were his daughters. Anatoly even visited the graves he had emptied, leaving small gifts and notes signed "Kind Angel" for the grieving families. These strange gestures were unbearable. Parents would visit their daughter's grave only to find them decorated with unusual trinkets or letters pleading with them not to bury the child again. For years, these families lived with uncertainty and fear, never knowing what had happened. The truth came out in 2011 when police investigating desecrated graves searched Anatoly's apartment. Inside, they found a place that looked like a child's playroom with toys and dolls everywhere. But when officers touched one of the dolls, it began to crumble. It was not made of plastic at all. It was the preserved body of a young girl. When police arrested him, Anatoly stayed calm. "You abandoned your girls," he told investigators. "I brought them home and warmed them up. So no, I will not apologize." Psychiatrists diagnosed him with schizophrenia. He was declared unfit for prison. He was committed to a psychiatric hospital where he remains to this day, a man living among the family he stole from the graves. In the mid-1980s, London's suburban streets looked peaceful. Children played outside, neighbors greeted each other under the glow of street lamps. But behind one door in the Muswell Hill, something unimaginable was hidden. The horror began to surface when two council workers tried to repair a clogged drain outside a small apartment building. What they pulled from the pipes was not normal debris, it was strange, fatty substance tangled with small pieces of bone. Horrified, they reported it to the police. The trail led to one upstairs flat belonging to Dennis Nilsen, a quiet civil servant. When officers knocked on his door, they were met with an overpowering stench of decay. Inside, cupboards and wardrobes were sealed shut. When police forced them open, they found plastic bags filled with body parts. A wooden box held human skulls and bones. Nilsen confessed on the spot. Between 1978 and 1983, he had murdered at least 15 young men, most of them drifters or men he met in bars. He lured them in with offers of food, alcohol, or a place to stay. Once they were asleep or distracted, he strangled them with a cord or tie. When the smell became overwhelming, he would burn some remains in his garden or cut up others and flush them down the toilet. That disposal method eventually clogged the drains, leading to the gruesome discovery. Throughout his arrest and trial, Nilsen was eerily calm. I was very lonely, he told police. All I needed was someone to love. He died in prison decades later, forever remembered as the Muswell Hill Murderer, a man who hid death behind a polite smile. Our final story takes us to rural Italy in the late 1930s, where superstition and tragedy shaped one woman's deadly beliefs. In Correggio, Leonarda Cianciulli lived in a modest home with clagged plaster walls and the smell of garlic and tomatoes in the air. She had endured unimaginable loss out of 17 pregnancies. Only 4 of her children survived. Years earlier, a fortune teller had told her that all of her children would die young, and the prophecy haunted her. When her eldest son, Giuseppe, was called to fight in World War II, Leonarda became convinced she could protect him only through human sacrifice. Her first victim was Faustina Setti, a lonely spinster who hoped Leonarda could help her find a husband. Leonarda promised to arrange a match and even had Faustina write letters to her fiancé. On the day of the murder, Leonarda invited her over for tea. She drugged Faustina's drink, then killed her with an axe. She dismembered the body and boiled the remains in lye until the flesh dissolved. She skimmed off the fat, poured it into molds, and made soap. She did not stop there. Leonarda baked some of Faustina's blood into small cakes, which she served to friends and neighbors. The second victim was Francisca Soavi, a widow who came to Leonarda for help. She too was drugged and killed with an axe. Leonarda repeated the same process, this time also taking money and jewelry from the body. The third victim was Virginia Cacioppo, a former opera singer. Leonarda lured her in with a promise of work, then killed her in the same way. Later in court, she described her methods with chilling pride. Her flesh was fat and white. After long boiled, I made the most acceptable creamy soup. The cakes were even better. She was sweet. Leonarda's downfall came when Virginia's family reported her missing. Police searched her home and she confessed in graphic detail, even correcting officers about the tools she used. She was sentenced to 30 years in prison and died there in 1970, still believing her murders had protected her son. Thank you for joining me on Red Case Files for these real-life nightmares. Stay safe and remember, the scariest stories are often the true ones.